Cash of the Titans, Charles. A lot of people are excited about Kash Patel being nominated for the FBI. Other people are upset. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for asking, and thanks for accommodating my 13-hour time difference. Uh, I'm pleased to report that I'm working. There are no kinks per se in the apartment, but I'm beginning to understand things like, unlike in the U.S., when you go into a shower or go to a basin, if you want hot water, there's a switch you've got to hit first, typically here, that I didn't know about. So I was perplexed as to why I had no hot water, but now I know. And I've accomplished things like going to supermarkets that have great food and stuff and reasonable prices, and learning how to use the drive service, which here it's not Uber, it's called Grab. It's very good. So I'm a happy camper.
You know, Charles, when you're a millionaire living in Penang, you can grab taxis by the whatever. You can do whatever you want.
So for now, prices are reasonable. One of the reasons is Malaysia is an oil producer, an oil exporter. So they keep the domestic prices for oil low, and that effect ripples around the economy, meaning that many costs that are quite expensive in the U.S. or the rough rule of thumb, things cost about 40% here of what they cost in the U.S. roughly, except for imported items, which have duties on them.
Tariffs, Charles. Everybody's talking about tariffs. But I think people want to know what you think. I mean, the big deal really, certainly on X and everything, is Kash Patel. And by the way, while we have everybody's attention, if they aren't already following you on X, I definitely recommend that people do that. You are on there at Charles Ortel. People can follow you. I'm surprised that the number is not going up, Charles. I think a lot more people are looking at X now. And you know what I was thinking about? How come it's not live here on X? Oh, there it is. You know what I was thinking about, Charles? Remember when Elon Musk bought Twitter and changed it to X, you taught me about the concept of arbitrage. And I think he definitely did it because people are like 54 million or billion or whatever he paid, way too much. But he's like, I'm going to use that to become best friends with the president and make trillions. And it seems like it worked.
No, X is good, but back on Kash. So far, I've had the one experience dealing with two, I would characterize, they're young, I don't know how senior they were, but highly ineffective FBI agents. I mean, it's like and there are multiple stories now that different people, whistleblowers, walk into the FBI and say, hey, here's evidence of this problem. What happens to the whistleblower? That whistleblower gets put in jail. So the FBI, there are too many things that the FBI has missed, and too many things, in quotes, missed, and too many examples, particularly under Biden and Obama, of the FBI being highly politicized, not only going after perceived enemies, political enemies of the president and his team, but protecting the president and his team and donors to the president and his team. And that's just outrageous behavior. The FBI, in the old days, there was a show called Dragnet, and I think that had to do with the FBI, and it featured the lead character was always saying, just the facts, ma'am. And that's what the FBI is supposed to chase out, facts and evidence. It's not supposed to target people who express opinions that are hostile to the sitting regime. And that's very clearly, Andrew McCabe is lucky, and that idiot Peter Strzok are lucky, and James Comey are lucky that they have been free for as long as they have been. They do belong, after a fair trial and a chance to defend themselves before a jury of their peers, they do, it seems to me, they have been in the past been involved in activities which seem to me to be criminal. And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not a prosecutor, but how did James Comey and Robert Mueller, and the team at the FBI, CIA, and IRS spend 4 years from 2001 through early 2005 looking at William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, according to their FBI vault, which isn't even the real name of the entity, and failed to appreciate that at no time during that period did the entity ever produce a legally required independent auditing statement. All the while soliciting enough money in theory, they said they claimed they spent 165 million on a complex there in Little Rock. They never had an audit for that. They've never produced an audit for that period when the funds were solicited across state and lines and international boundaries. And the FBI was investigating this thing the whole time. In that FBI vault, there are multiple references to different people, actual named people and redacted named people. The team was vast. How come nobody in the FBI, 2001 to 2005, said, wait a minute, this thing is raised, let's call it 200 million bucks, all the while soliciting donations. And Bill Clinton has claimed that he started the damn thing in 2001, January, February in New York. The thing never filed lawfully in New York or in any other state, never had an audit, still has not produced an audit. How come nobody saw that in 2001 to 2005? And how come when they actually opened an investigation while Comey was still head of the FBI in 2016 into this Clinton Foundation, they never went back over that ground already in their own files. They never picked the audit trail up, as it were, to understand that there has never been a legally compliant audit of now the entity, the scheme, I would call it. It's called Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. How come nobody at the FBI ever saw that? And the answer is, of course, they saw that. And they determined that it was much smarter to have incredible leverage over the Clintons and then over the Bushes who allowed this to happen, and leverage over Barack Obama, and maybe leverage over Donald Trump. The FBI concluded that they're above these elected officials, and they're going to tell them how high to jump. And what scares, I think, these people who've been pulling the strings of many politicians across the political spectrum, inside and outside the country, what scares them now is that somebody like a Kash Patel, and nobody's perfect, so Kash Patel is certainly not perfect. Who knows what's in his background? Maybe there are issues, but the man has held multiple high-level government jobs. He's certainly more qualified to lead the FBI than Pete Buttigieg ever was qualified to be head of the Secretary of Transportation. And we could go on and on and on. He's certainly more qualified to be on the FBI than the idiot who couldn't tell the difference between a man and a woman, refused to comment on that as she was being confirmed to a lifetime position on the Supreme Court. He's certainly more qualified than she is. And so here you have all these Looney Tunes who are already trying to obstruct the incoming Trump administration. This time, Trump understands that a chief problem with the FBI is that so far the FBI retains the authority and responsibility to vet every single cabinet confirmed, every single Senate confirmed appointee of any administration. That's an awesome power, and it shouldn't be vested in a partisan agency. It just simply shouldn't.
It's also not mentioned in the Constitution. How does it fit into this constitutional process if it's never even contemplated?
Right, exactly. So, of course the swamp is screaming. Of course, you and I met, and we should mention her name. I think her name was Shelby, what was her last name? Halliday?
Halliday.
Yeah, Shelby Halliday was a young reporter, I think at the Wall Street Journal. I don't know where she is now. And she would meet with me. Halliday, yeah. She's a nice enough individual, but she would meet with me, and her first question would always be, has the FBI contacted you yet?
Yeah.
Well, how would she know whether the FBI was supposed to contact you?
Right.
And this was in a zone this was under Obama, was under Trump, and the FBI press relations person was then in the habit of holding meetings with reporters outside of that person's office, which is something she wanted to always do, as if that's going to protect you. So, I think the FBI and the other agencies have enormous power to shape the narrative in the mainstream press, less so in the alternative press, by finding somebody like a Shelby Halliday, who's a young cub reporter, on the up and up and say, hey, Shelby, we had a story for you, but you got to protect the source here. You can't let us know, let the public know, that we, the FBI, are planting this story with you. Then they write the story saying, Charles Hortel is a friend of Peter Smith and has these concerns about blah, 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 blah. And then the FBI can say, well, I saw it in the Wall Street Journal, and that's why I want to contact Charles Hortel. That's rubbish and bullshit. And that has got to stop. And to the extent that has been happening, people, if crimes have been committed because of this reporting, if people have been arrested and unfairly prosecuted and imprisoned because of this approach, a lot of folks need to go to jail, including people in the media.
Wow, that was perfect timing, Charles. I couldn't have timed that any better if Rachel Maddow was working for us. But yeah, I'm showing this because this whole, bullshit tome with Peter Smith and him knowing General Flynn, which then did play a role in the whole Flynn prosecution and laying out the just everything that they were doing to Trump. Rachel Maddow plays a role in that. And I'm not kidding. I'm not like, trash talking and trying to be like, go our team. She needs to be prosecuted, but we already see them gearing up to do what they're going to do, which is to just say, no matter who they prosecute, they'll just say, oh, this is revenge. And, Trump is weaponizing the justice system by coming after the people who actually broke the law, who actually defrauded the public, who actually put out this false information knowingly so that, exactly as you just said, they could gin up a whole giant FBI investigation. And it's, what? People think like, oh, this is social media and the news. Ha, ha, ha. It's all a big joke. But no, this this fertilized the ground to grow the toxic garden that is the war in Ukraine. And if they had allowed Donald Trump to just, diplomatically communicate with Putin, maybe all of this could have been avoided. Gas might still be $1 a gallon. We all might not be broke and pissed off and having crime like crazy in New York, but I digress.
Yeah. Well, you could go further back. You could go back to FDR, he was the one who got Simon Kuznets to invent the precursor to GDP called GNP, which is a calculation widely used by anyone who wants to think about, is the economy growing or not growing? They all focus now on GDP. Is it up? Is it down? Adjusted for inflation. But no one goes deeply enough into the calculations that are used, the estimates that are used to create GDP, to understand that GDP is a fundamentally flawed garbage statistic, which overcounts the contributions made in theory by government and fails to account for the gross damage that is caused by government when it borrows more than it takes in. It assumes that any dollar spent by the government is a positive thing, and that is absolutely not the case. And since 1934, when GNP was proposed by Simon Kuznets, yes, GDP has GNP and its subsequent thing, GDP. Yes, they've grown even in real terms, but the vast bureaucracy that now is our government, it's the largest expenditure inside the country. It's the largest expenditure of any comprehensively thought through organization makes on the planet is incredibly counterproductive. And I hope the Doge team are looking at that. They're not just saying, well, let's just evaluate our work on whether or not it increases GDP. No, GDP vastly overcounts the supposed positive contributions of government. And if you were to just look at a much more easier statistic, which is workers' compensation, private sector workers' compensation, and the income, they call it businesses like yours, you're a sole proprietor, but proprietorships, you look at the profits of proprietorships and the private sector incomes, and you look at that per person after taxes and after inflation. How is that? And really, you should look at it per hour if you could do it. How is that? What's the trend in that statistic? What's the trend in total debt? And then look at the disparities between the ways in which public sector workers are paid and people like you are paid, right? Nancy Pelosi's daughter according to something I was just reading, is making $180,000 roughly as a climate advisor to some one of the branches of the federal government, the housing department or something. It's ridiculous. $180,000 to pay, frankly, anybody, any bureaucrat in the federal government. The average, if you look at the Consumer Expenditure Survey and you look at the average pay of people in the top 10%, the next 10% in this country, and that includes government workers, you look at it, it's more like $65,000, $70,000. There's no way you should pay a climate advisor to the housing department, whatever department
that's
she's
a lot
working
of money. 180.
It's absurd. And she probably works one day a month. And people were explaining to me, I forget who, that the way that this actually works is you would work January 1st, that's your January day of the month, and February 28th or 9th, depending on whether it's a leap year. And you would get to stay away from work for 60 days.
What?
And you still get your $180,000. Fuck that. It's ridiculous. It's an insult.
It is.
To the taxpayer that people are making that kind of money. And what are they doing? You know, they may be pretending to read studies that outside consultants have done. You can't work if you actually work on anything. A real job at $180,000 if you're in the office one day a month.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But wait, Charles, before you move off of Doge, here's a pretty interesting headline. Bernie Sanders agrees with Elon Musk. He says he's right to slash the Pentagon, and they've lost track of billions.
But probably take that money and increase, the Department of fucking around that gives his wife
Department of
money.
Satellites.
Huh?
The Department of Satellites. You're saying Bernie Sanders is going to want to increase the department. Yeah.
Right. He's going to want to slash the Pentagon and take that money and give it to the Department of Education so his wife can bankrupt another university that she's going to chair, where she can make a lot of money as president of that, and who knows, run another foundation. No, Bernie's he just wants our enemies to come in and take over the country.
But also there's breaking news, Charles. There was a red banner there saying that Joe Biden is getting ready to pardon Hunter, and he says that his prosecution was political. I don't think so. I think Hunter was up to a lot of criminal stuff. Oh, they say Joe pardoned.
The reason he's going to pardon him is if he doesn't.
He might have done it already.
If he's pardoned Hunter, his son, then the retribution that needs to go against Joe Biden has to be. Akin to what happened in Carson.
He did it. ABC News says Joe Biden issues pardon. Charles, that's dirty business.
On both charges or just?
President Biden issues pardon for son Hunter Biden. The announcement came Sunday evening that he had pardoned Hunter Biden. President Joe Biden has pardoned his son, who was convicted on federal gun charges and is due for sentencing in December. Despite the White House assurances last month that the president had no intentions of pardoning his son, the announcement came through on Sunday that he had pardoned him.
He's got tax charges too. On both charges or just gun?
Statement concluded, here's the truth. More on president and the plans of pardoning his son over the summer. Sure, it doesn't say anything about the tax stuff. It just says gun.
Outrageous. It's fucking outrageous. This guy, Joe Biden, is...
Hey, wait. It says, over the summer, a jury found the younger Biden guilty on 3 felony charges related to his purchase or possession of a firearm while addicted to drugs. And in September, Hunter Biden agreed to plead guilty to 9 tax-related charges, including 3 felonies. For the tax charges, Hunter Biden faced up to 17 years in prison and $1.35 million in fines. His gun-related conviction carried potential up to 25 years in prison. Hunter Biden was scheduled to face sentencing. Yeah, so I guess he got him on both.
This is outrageous. Joe Biden, his presidency will be studied in time. And this is a man who is, he makes Papa Doc Duvalier in Haiti look like Mother Teresa. Think about what this man did. He not only left behind $85 billion worth of military equipment in Afghanistan, but subsequently paid $48 billion to the Taliban, including money so they could attend the recent climate conference. Right? He rushed us into a war in Ukraine to cover up, I would argue, the extent of the corruption involving Hunter, himself, his brother, probably other members in his family, have taken money from Ukrainian oligarchs. Why? Because those oligarchs, wanted to do whatever they do inside and around Ukraine. Most likely, the oligarchs who paid the Bidens whatever they paid them have stolen a substantial amount of the money that we in the West have sent into Ukraine in an effort that has so far resulted in 1 million people dying. Then we get to China. Everybody says, oh, let's forget about China. Can't think about that. But Joe Biden has claimed that he has had more meetings with the leader of China than any other American. And here's his son, now pardoned by his father, getting involved in a private equity firm financed by the government of China, in theory, to do billion-dollar deals. Joe Biden unable to explain how his income went from peanuts, as I wrote about in the American Thinker, from the time he was senator and vice president, to making 10 million or more per year in 2017 until he became president.
But Charles,
so the Chinese and others bought off this crooked imbecile for chump change relative to the billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, and maybe trillions that they've sucked out of the global economy because the United States has been compromised. Not just by Biden, but by people like McConnell, maybe the Bush family and Romney and other Republicans. But this is a despicable act. And if there is a single Democrat, if there's not one Democrat who can stand up and say, this is bullshit, then, I am not interested in anything that any Democrat ever has to say again about any topic. I'm simply not interested. This is outrageous.
It is, and we need a reformation of the presidential pardon power because obviously, I think we need some constitutional person to look at how did they come up with the idea that the president is allowed to do this, because it cannot possibly be that it was intended to allow him to forgive the criminals who violated the laws that allowed the guy to steal the presidency in the first place, because that circumvents the whole entire democratic process. I think it's designed such that it's like an ultimate remedy for some false, transgression of justice or something like that. You should not be able to pardon people in your own family or people who have a direct relationship with you. Like something's got to be done. This can't be allowed to go on.
Yeah, this is far worse than Bill Clinton pardoning Susan Rosenberg, who, by the way, is the most objectionable person I know of that Bill Clinton pardoned. It's not Mark. Mark Rich is bad, but Susan Rosenberg was a convicted felon who actually had bombed government property. She was sitting in prison for, I think, 17 years before she was pardoned and freed by Bill Clinton. And then she went on to get involved in the 16 cycle and the 20 cycle, I believe, with affiliates of Act Blue, which is that crooked
Tides or something it was called. What was it called?
I forget, so there's too much money in politics and there's too much potential for abuse. And what this shows, this is a video game president, right? Elon Musk brags about how he's, a top contender in some video game. And Joe Biden, yes, he's the president of the United States, but he's the president of the United States because the system is fucking crooked. And, they absolutely cheated in the 2020 election. Absolutely. They're cheating right now in California. They still haven't counted votes in congressional races in California. I mean, give me a fucking break. What day is it over there? It's December. It's still 1st. Yeah. December 1st, and you haven't counted the votes? What are you using? You're translating, each ballot into 40 languages and then into some, digital algorithm and then burying it underground and taking it. I mean, come on, you should have had.
Yeah, it's like limoncello. They have to bury it outside for 40 days before they can, before it matures and ripens. But Charles, we're almost out of time here. We're going to have to continue our conversation in the First Amendment forum. We got a lot to talk about because, you see, listen, I want people to understand I'm optimistic about Kash Patel simply for the reason that Donald Trump selected him. And I hope that Donald Trump knows him well and knows what he's doing. But Charles, I found some information that I'd like to go over with you in the First Amendment Forum about Kash Patel, some of the people that he's associated with, a nonprofit that he's the director of, and his history going to, is he a lawyer? I mean, he's got a certificate from a particular law school, but we'll go through some of this stuff as we do. I think a lot of it is going to be new to you and maybe even to our viewers. So if people aren't yet sponsors, they're going to be able to join us by getting onto odyssey.com/@crowdsource the truth. That's the most economical way to sponsor the show, as little as $3 a month plus a 58-cent Odyssey fee. It's practically nothing. If you're interested at all, I encourage you to sponsor. You can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. See you in 5.